chat about from the chair to a support role. Is this a new trend? As I said, this is our 68th webinar, but this is a subject that is really taking on more interest among college sports, as you see very high-level personnel taking different journeys in their path in college sports. And so we have three very interesting speakers to join us today. But before introducing them, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to go over any housekeeping items.
Hello, thanks for joining us today. Just some quick housekeeping items. Please note that all attendees other than panelists will remain in a listen-only mode for the entire discussion. However, if you would like to speak, you have a few options. You can use the raise hand function and I will recognize you and unmute you individually. You can message us directly in the questions tab. These questions will be read aloud and you will remain anonymous. Or you can write a question in the chat box, but note that anything written here will be seen by the entire audience. With that, Tom, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you. Well, let me introduce our speakers because we're going to talk about this new development where folks are leaving the chair to take other positions, and we're going to discuss whether that's part and parcel of the industry, new trends, or whatever. So our three speakers, the first, Tommy McClellan. Tommy joined Vanderbilt in 2020 as Deputy Athletic Director of External Affairs and Revenue Generation. He also directs Vanderbilt's marketing and promotional efforts, ticket operation and sales, fan engagement and hospitality and broadcast. So he has quite a portfolio. Previous to joining Vanderbilt, Tom was Director of Athletics at Louisiana Tech from 2013 to 2019, where he was the athletic director. Our next speaker will be Kurt Apsey. Kurt joined San Diego State in 2020 as the Associate Athletic Director for Development. After completing a 21-year association with Boise State University, including serving as the athletic director from 2015 to 2020. And finally, Shane Lyons is with us. Shane was named the University of Alabama's Executive Director of Athletics, while also holding the designation of Chief Operating Officer in 2022. And previous, Shane was the Director of Athletics and Associate Vice President at West Virginia University from 2015 to 2022. Before that, he had served as Deputy Director in Alabama from 2011 to 2015. So thank you all for being here. You three represent a trend that has occurred where folks have left the chair and gone to other positions, but it's not new. Alan Green has recently left Auburn as in the chair, and now he's at Ole Miss as Deputy Director. Beth Getz left Ball State as Athletic Director, now at Iowa as Deputy. Let's talk about your journey, and for each of you, why you are where you're at right now, and what all that means from your perspective. Let's start with Kurt.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It has been a long journey from being a student athlete to a coach and then to an administrator over the last 30 or so years. A lot of that time spent in Boise, overseeing external, and then having the opportunity to be athletic director there. So it's been an unbelievable 35 to 40 years for me. Reasoning for boys from Boise to San Diego State, more than anything, Tom, I think we'll probably all agree that we love this business and we love what we do, and we still have a passion for it. Although I'm probably at the end of my deal here, maybe not so much for Tom and Shane, but I've always loved what I do. I love working with student athletes. I love being a part of the campus environment, and I go back to Jim Sturk here and JD Wicker, athletic directors here at San Diego State, who I've known for a long time, and just had an opportunity to kind of keep going. And I'm not going to lie, having a chance to move to San Diego with my wife has been an adventure for us, and just appreciated every single minute of it. So that's why we're still doing it.
Well, we'll continue with that in a minute. Shane, how about your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to Kurt's, the same thing, you just have a passion for intercollegiate athletics and trying to make a difference in student athletes' lives. And, this gave me an opportunity when I separated from West Virginia. Obviously, I was very familiar with Alabama. The timing was right. And, got that phone call from Greg Byrne to say, there was a position here. Would you like to come back to Alabama and serve as chief operating officer? And so, gave, a quick turnaround to leave West Virginia and have an opportunity to come back here. And again, it's just a matter of being in the chair. And I know we'll get to this, Tom, but, understanding a little bit more what the athletic director, in my case, Craig, is going through on a day-to-day basis, and the number of issues that's, currently facing an athletic director. It used to be one or two major issues every 3 to 5 years. And now you have over a handful going on, simultaneously as we speak. So being able to be a chief operating officer here at Alabama, hopefully take some, pressure off the athletic director and handle some of those day-to-day responsibilities that, they can focus on the bigger picture. So again, appreciate being here today and talking about my journey as well.
Tommy, thanks, Shane.
Yeah, I think for me, I was fortunate to be an athletic director at a very young age, but when you're at an FCS level, and then I was at Louisiana Tech at a group of 5, the opportunity to then become an athletic director at a Power 5 level, there were at times where it felt like there was a missing element. And so because of my time and my age, through consultation with others, it felt like, this might be an opportunity for me to go ahead and make an investment in my career to gain that kind of Power 5 SEC in particular experience that might serve me later on while I continue to learn things that Shane was in a deputy AD role, and it probably served him very, very well when he was at West Virginia. And I didn't have that experience, and not to say learning on the fly, but you're trying to build the ship while you're the plane while you're flying it. This gives me an opportunity to gain perspective that I did not have previously. And so just really grateful to be able to come and work at a place like Vanderbilt, and for an individual like Candace, and be able to walk alongside her as we try to do something special here.
We all have 100 years of collective athletic department experience. I mean, it's pretty substantial. So in your tenure in college sports, talk about how this industry's changed for the better or for the worse. We'll go the other way. Tommy, you go first.
Well, my time has certainly changed, and I probably had the shortest amount. And I think back of being an athletic director in 2007 at McNeese, and it was illegal to provide to pick up a student athlete on one side of campus in a pouring down rainstorm and drive them to the other side of campus. That would have been a violation. And so going from that to where we are now, there's been a lot of change since 2006. And where we're going, I think that's the magic question. We're trying to figure that out. I think one of the things is making sure that we continue to have really good people in college athletics. We want to make sure that we're cultivating the next generation of leaders that will stay in this industry because we're going to continue to have sports. What it looks like will be defined by the people that lead. And I think it's important that we continue to invest in the people that are here now and in the future generations as well.
Shane?
Yeah, I think it's, as Tommy said, it's intercollegiate athletics continues to evolve. And, when I got involved in the business in the, after graduate schools in the late 80s, things were a lot different. And now the revenue that the institutions are seeing from TV contracts, et cetera, is much more different. I remember back in the late 90s to early 2000s was the first time that you saw, a football coach, a head football coach, surpass that $1 million figure as a head coach. And now we have offense and defensive coordinators in football making, 2 million plus in a lot of different places. So that's where I think the evolution of college athletics has changed, and what it looks like. Obviously now we're dealing with the name, image, likeness piece of that, and how we can continue providing benefits above and beyond the full scholarship and cost of attendance to student athletes, and what does that look like. Obviously, I think we're all aware on this call of the continued legal issues that we're facing, especially in California with the bill talking about revenue sharing, for student athletes and what that looks like. You have Johnson versus the NCAA, and is student athletes employees or not employees? We talked a little bit about the Alston case and educational benefits and how that's changed here in the last couple of years. So I feel like Tommy, it's not going to go away, meaning intercollegiate athletics, but what it's going to look like in the future. We have a little bit of a divide as we go into this of Olympic sports and new revenue sports. And, I think we all in this call understand that our Olympic sport athletes work very hard, just like our revenue sport athletes, but those revenue sports are the ones who generate the revenue to help support, our Olympic sports, and what happens, if there is discussion in the future about revenue sharing in those sports and what happens to the Olympic sports. That's the question that we continue to look at and say, how's that going to impact college athletics as we know it today? So a lot of unanswered questions as we move forward. Before coming here, I had the opportunity to serve on the transformation committee. Again, a lot of those discussions behind closed doors for hours upon hours of, whether, what the model is going to look like as we move forward. And there hasn't been a clear answer yet. But that's something that again, people that very smart have to look at and start trying to define, of understanding that it is changing and what it's going to look like in the future, and what will college athletics be.
Well, we're going to come back to that crystal ball in a minute and use those 100 years of your experience to focus on that. But Kurt, do you want to respond to the question?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo both of these guys in their comments. I think just the overall benefit to the student athlete has dramatically. I think the cost of doing business has also changed very quickly. It's put, I think, just a lot of challenges on athletic departments across the country to make more money and spread that dollar out even farther. One of the things I would say, at least out west here, one of the big differences versus today versus 15, 20 years ago is just the support from the state. That has gone the other direction, and there's just become a much greater, I would say, expectation of an athletic department to make money to keep up, to retain good coaches, to provide the experiences for the student athletes that I think we all want to see. And it's just become more difficult. And I think it's drawn that line in the sand between Power 5 and Group of 5 even farther apart. Back to Shane's comments about Olympic sports, NIL, in terms of its relationship with football and men's basketball versus the other sports, I think is going to be a big challenge for a lot of campuses. And certainly when you're in the seat of being an athletic director, those are things that keep you up at night.
So when you were in the chair, the buck stopped with you. You were the one that had to make decisions. Now you're in support roles. How do you navigate that? How do you balance those tendencies to say, look, the buck stops with me, to now you're supporting someone that has to kind of have the buck stop with them? Kurt, you want to go first on that?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the individual. In my case, I thought it was really important for me to have a really good understanding of what the expectation of my role here was going to be from the AD. And, it's always nice, I think, when a leader can bring on people with experience. Doesn't mean it's absolutely necessary, but, I can certainly walk in the door and explain to people how maybe not to do it. That's for sure. But I think just being in that support role, having a lot of experience and understanding what the athletic director is going through on a daily basis, and even going as far as, I think we mentioned this on our call the other day, you know, it's, you're not the face of the program anymore, although you can be, you know, if asked, you can get up in front of a podium and address donors and the media or whatever it might be, just, you know, because you've been through that. But I think just that comfort level from the athletic director, having me or Tom or Shane around, you know, right down the hall to run something by us, or to say, hey, I need you to take this. I think that level of support is comforting to someone who's in the head chair. And I think for me, really with JD, it was just understanding, Tom, what my role was going to be here, and, you know, that I didn't overstep my bounds. My next step isn't going to be in the chair again, so I might look at that a little differently than some others. But I feel like I've made a difference here and been very helpful to him, and understanding what he goes through, you know, kind of on a daily basis.
Shane?
Yeah, I think the same thing there, you know, Tom, it's about the experience and, you know, who you're working for and what their expectations are. And, you know, I think my leadership style was very similar to Greg, that you want to be, you know, especially with your leadership team. He wants a true advisory group to talk to him. And Greg always says, and I always said this as well while being in the chair, don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what is the, you know, what is the real issues, and then let me decide what, you know, I want to do with it as being AD. And same with Greg being here. He doesn't just want people to be yes people, saying, tell them where the landmines are. And, you know, I think being in that chair before, you can kind of, you know, help guide those decisions to say, you know, have you thought about this, or another alternative, you know, to that decision. Ultimately, he's the person that's going to have to make the call and be the face of the program and deal with whatever, you know, constituent group that you're dealing with. But I think being able to advise and work with somebody that wants that, you know, true, honest opinion of saying, tell me really what you think, not what you think I want to hear from you. So I think that's important, you know, going through that. You know, I think personally, it's, you know, you do have to change a little bit yourself in your role, knowing that you aren't the final decision maker. There's some benefits to that. By all means, there's a little less pressure, but I think we all take our jobs very serious. And, you know, we feel the pressures of, you know, what we do in our job day in and day out, even though you're not the, you know, the face of the program, but you're working to make the experience of the student athletes, you know, on your campus and intercollegiate athletics the best it can be. You know, I've always said that this, you know, this isn't an 8 to 5 job. You know, this is a lifestyle. You know, when you work in intercollegiate athletics, knowing it's 7 days a week and more or less 365 days a year. So, you know, you wear that, but at the same time, it's, you know, you're in that role now of helping advise and give your previous experience to the athletic director so that he or she can make the appropriate decisions.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. I mean, what's been said, I think making the decision or choosing, because all of us on this call had a choice to be where we're at now. You know, we could have said no to Candace or Greg or John, but I think the alignment, recognizing, is this an individual that I want to work with, given the fact that I've been in a chair before. And so for me, just the ultimate respect that I have for Candace, having known her a little bit in the industry, but got to know her a lot more through the process, realize that like our compass, the moral compass that she has, the kind of core beliefs are in alignment. And so we might differ on certain detailed items, but we're not going to differ on those core beliefs in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish every day. And then that allows freedom to have, as Shane said, kind of just factual conversations and just real honest, truthful talk. I think you have to be a person that's willing to humble yourself and be that servant, because you're not the decision maker, but with that comes the less responsibility. You know, you're not the one, hey, this is why, you know, I see it this way, you choose it that way. But the arrows are going to be, they may be glancing blows at a deputy, but they're direct hits to an athletics director. And I think ultimately I respect that so much in knowing what it's like to have stepped out in decisions to do something, or in some cases not to do something. And so I have the most admiration and respect for Candace and all the athletic directors in trying to make the decisions with the information that's available and that you have at the time. And you're just trying to help supply them with that, maybe give some anecdotal, this is what I did one time, or this is how it turned out, or it didn't, but ultimately just unwavering in your ability to serve, because ultimately we're now in even more so a serving role, serving up and across with our peers, and certainly continuing to lead staff.
Well, what would you say to a young aspiring AD about the industry today compared to when you went into it? I mean, I look at presidential turnover. I mean, it's just so much greater than it was. Look at AD turnover. Look at coach turnover. It's just much more volatile. The expectations keep rising. What would you say to a young person that's looking at this industry? I mean, the pay's gone up, but a lot of it comes with a lot of baggage. So what would you say to someone that's looking at becoming a AD someday?
I'll
Tommy?
jump in there, Tom.
Yeah.
You know, I think Tommy kind of answered. You got to have your own core values and morals, and if you live by those every day, and I think each and every one of us on this call, you know, we got into the business to make a difference in young people's lives. And every decision that I made, you know, I went to bed at night saying, is this best for the student athlete? And is this the best thing for my institution? And if I can answer those two questions and lay my head on the pillow, I slept pretty well. So I never wavered from, you know, my morals and values and what I think intercollegiate athletics should be and how it should be structured as we move forward. So, you know, I think that you have to have that moral compass and say, this is who I am as a person, and, you know, we're going to do it the right way. And again, you're making a difference in these young people's lives. You know, I have, you know, my son just finished playing and he was an athlete, and, you know, that helped me a lot to have a student athlete and know what they're going through. And being able to bounce even things off of them to say, you know, what's your expectations as a student athlete as you move forward. And again, it's making that 4 or 5 years that they spend at an institution something very memorable. And that's the rewards, is being in this business, and then, you know, having student athletes return that you worked with 5, 10, 15 years ago, and them saying, you know, that was the best 4 or 5 years of my life when I was at this, you know, institution, and, you know, made a difference or got my degree, and how important that degree is in the impacting their lives. So, you know, I think if you have those as you move forward, you know, this can be a very rewarding business. I will say that I think social media, especially sitting in the chair, has changed the business. You got to have thick skin, because you're going to hear a lot from the Twitter haters that they think they all want to be athletic directors, and they, you know, will make decisions after they don't have all the facts, but they think they have the facts. So you can't, you know, I quit looking at social media as an athletic director, because, you know, you knew that they were coming after you, but they didn't have all the facts of it. So you have to really, you know, not look at Twitter and the other social media aspects, because that was, if you let it get to you, it can get to you from that aspect.
Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I would again echo Shane's comments in terms of coming or wanting to sit in the chair. I go back to the passion part. You know, it doesn't matter, I think, what you do professionally. You got to wake up every day and love it. I think that's why we're all still in it. And then carry on to student athlete experience and graduation and success on the field and all that goes into that. In terms of how to get there, I think sometimes we all at a younger age kind of worry about how we're going to get to the next level. And we spend so much time thinking about that we really don't do our job how it should be done. You know, I always kind of say, if you're out looking for a job all the time, you're probably not doing your job. And I think we can all sort of relate to the effort that it took to get to where we are now. And it was hard. The other part that I think is really important, back to Shane's comment, is, you know, having thick skin. If you do get on social media, I can almost tell you most of the time, there's not going to be a bunch of people on there saying thank you. And I think you just have to avoid that as much as you can. I still think you need to know what's going on social media wise, but you know, if you take anything personally in this business, it's just really hard, because a lot of times you're not going to be in a position to share the why. And I think we've all been through that before. I think we all, you know, back to being able to go to sleep. Did we make the right decision for the student athlete, our staff, and the university? And that usually helps you lie your head on the pillow a little easier.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. We work and we have a job that is noble, right? I mean, like we have the opportunity at its core to work with student athletes, and in many cases, who are first generation college students and are getting the opportunity to go to college and be provided to even in a greater way now through all the access that they have. That's a noble cause. It's not easy. I think anybody that's trying to get into the industry or wants to be an AD that thinks it's easy or glamorous is naive. Now, Tom, I want to do some political quotes here. You know, John F. Kennedy's To the Moon speech that he gave at Rice Stadium, he said that we don't choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it is easy, but because it's hard. And if you want to be an AD, you got to do it not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Not everybody can do it. And it is probably the most complex job that I can think of in the country. I mean, because between donors, season ticket holders, average fans, student athletes, the risks, the landmines, but it is highly rewarding. As we all know, everybody that's on this call knows, I mean, you're able to see the wins and the losses and the triumphs and the failures and the overcoming. But in order to make a difference, I was talking to a person last week and talking about how do I want to be an AD so I can make an impact. I'm like, you can make an impact where you are. Impact is made at eye level. It's not made through policy. You know, to make a difference on someone, you make policy that change systems. But in order to make an impact, that's at eye level. You can do that in your hallway. You can do that down the hall in a different building. But you have to be willing to, and Kurt said that, sometimes you're so worried about the climb that you're not paying attention to the people and the things around you in order to make that difference. And so being an AD is great. You making decisions on personnel and policy and change and all these things, but an impact is made at eye level, and anyone that is in the building can make an impact.
Well, I think that's very well said. Listen, I want to remind folks, if they have any questions, to please go to the chat room or raise your hand, whatever. Sarah, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. The first question is, isn't the job 100% dependent on the success of your football program? That must be difficult.
Well, I'll answer that to start. Let me just say this. In 2006, I got named interim AD at McNeese. I don't know anything. Whatever. I get named AD in 2006. And the football, March of 07. And in the fall of 07, the football team went undefeated. And I got the interim tag removed. I did nothing to help win a single game with our football program at McNeese, but somehow magically, I was a really good AD. I promise you that if our football team would have gone winless, would not be the AD at McNeese. And now I think there's broader success, and great leaders and boards and presidents recognize the robustness, but fans are very, very focused on that sport in particular. And I know that I would not be where I'm at today if Matt Viator did not go undefeated in 2007 with the football program.
Shane?
Yeah, I think a lot of Tommy just said. Yeah, I think it's more and more that it does depend on your football. I mean, there's articles written by, national media of, successes of ADs, and it all ties back to, the football coach you hired and whether he had success or didn't have success. That's a lot of times that you're great as an athletic director. Same thing as Tommy said, I think you got to look at the big picture of understanding that football is king, and it does depend on a lot, but most of us have 18, 19, 20 other sports as well, plus academics, plus graduation, things that we got into business for. But without question, you have if your football team is winning, then there's a lot of pressure not on the athletic director. If your football program is not winning, obviously that's when the pressure and the fan base is that you're being judged as an athletic director, on that football success.
Kurt,
Yeah, I would agree. I would say too that, football success in terms of whether or not you're successful in the AD chair is, I think, different when it's looked at externally. They're only seeing what's going on, for 60 minutes, 13 or 14 weeks during the fall. But I don't think, what's seen from the outside and what's going on internally, sometimes coincides with each other. I think it's, you can have success on the football field, but what's the culture like in your department? What is your relationship with donors and people on campus? That's the part that people probably don't see very often. I mean, don't get me wrong. During my time in Boise, we won a heck of a lot of football games. But I think sometimes, what goes on internally isn't seen, which can also, play a role in whether or not you're in that chair.
you guys have been around the block here a few times, and I'd love to get your perspective on where you see college sports 10 years from now. I want you to crystal ball it. What kind of job will an AD have 10 years from now? Will student athletes be full employees? Will they be collectively bargaining? Will the connection to education be frayed? Will it be stronger? What are some of your thoughts about, where we're heading? Good or bad? I'd just love to let's start with Tom.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly headed, it seems headed more towards a compensation model, more of a compensation model, whether they are classified as employees or not. I know that at least here at Vanderbilt, being tethered to education, what that looks like seems to be central to the core of what it is to be a student athlete. I think that, in my opinion, leaning further in so that we can, in some ways, get past where we're at right now so that we can lean further in on compensation. Again, whether we're defining them as employees or not, there's more to, define there. But it feels like we're grasping at straws in order to continue to stay away from litigation, which is also not helping because we've got a million of them lined up. But it's complex. I think you may be managing in 10 years, an AD may be more like a GM or a president of a professional organization where you're potentially managing, salary cap. Again, I'm saying things that may be taboo or whatever, but it seems like where we're headed. And I think in general, the notion that we're trying to be like a professional organization, we're not, but we also know that we're way far beyond from being amateurism. And so how do we further define and bring more clarity to the collegiate model, which to me, the anchor to that is the educational piece, being enrolled in school while also being compensated in some form or fashion.
It sounds like you're talking about football and basketball and maybe, another revenue producing sport or two, but what happens to all the rest? Do they all become club sports in this model that you are thinking about?
I mean, are you asking me to define college athletics right now, Tom?
No, no, I'm asking for Chris. I'm asking you.
I don't know the answer, but I would assume the economics of it would suggest that there is a difference. But there still has to be money that is transferred from the revenue to the non-revenue. All right. I mean, because otherwise no way to do it. But that's what we're doing now. And so I don't know how to reconcile that, but it ultimately does seem that I think that, from a Title IX standpoint, you're not really tiering sports right now, but maybe we have to get to the point where you can tier based on the revenues that are generated.
The reason I'm asking is if someone was asking you today, look, I want to be an AD when I grow up, what kind of world are they heading towards, Shane?
Well, I think a lot of what Tommy just said there, I think, and I'll never forget this, Tom, again, going back to working on the transformation committee and some of the individuals that were advising us, and one individual had over 25 years plus working for the Department of Justice. And I remember him saying, this is the most complex organization I've ever dealt with. And that has stuck, because I think we are. I mean, you've heard Tommy and Kurt say it a couple of different times. We keep on using the term complex organization. And, I think we have something very unique here in the United States, where we have tethered athletics to academics. In a lot of ways, that is a great thing. And how do we continue moving that forward? Because, the education, as we always tell student athletes, there's something they can't take away from you. That ball's going to quit bouncing someday, whatever sport that you play, but you're going to still walk away with that degree that's going to help you in the future. And, so that's something very special about intercollegiate athletics here in the United States. But we continue to wrestle with, whether they're going to be classified as employees. Is it going to be more of a professional model where future athletic directors are managing, salary caps of what that looks like? There's been things that's thrown out as whether that in your revenue sports, do you have a model where you're buying the licensing agreements back from the institution, and it does look a little bit more like that professional model, but you can still tie it to, some degree back to education of you get some educational value, but also, there could be actual dollars to the student athlete's pocket, looking more like a professional model. So, I think in the future, that's what, a young person is going to have to be looking at down the pipe here, of saying, here's what intercollegiate athletics is going to look like in the future. And it's probably going to look more, like a relationship of an employee and to the athletic department, above and beyond what we have today.
Interesting. Kurt.
Well, once again, when I follow these two guys, they've said most of it all, so I won't add too much. But I would say NIL and the future of it and how it's legislated is really going to dictate what tomorrow looks like in this business. And I think some of us will say we don't like it, or some of us will say it's the way it is, or you definitely got to play the game. I mean, at the end of the day, recruiting is just so important in our business. And I do think there's been, I don't know if it's underappreciated or maybe forgotten a little bit, what student athletes currently get today and what we provide. And I think a lot of times people just say, well, it's room, board, and tuition and books. It's so much more than that. And I don't mean financially, I mean more from just a support system of academics and strength and conditioning and nutrition and mental health and all the things that go into making sure that we are providing that great experience. I think that's been lost a little bit. But I do think legislation overall and NIL and collectives and all that going forward is really going to dictate the direction that this business goes. And Tom, you know better than anybody, LEAD1 has made, an unbelievable effort over the last 2 or 3 years to try to get our arms around this thing. And I think at some point that's going to need to happen. I say that all at the same time that, you know, a student athlete being able to take care of their name, image, and likeness and put some extra money into their pockets. It's just the way it is right now. And we have to support that to whatever level it is, it's okay to support.
Thank you. Sarah, we got some questions?
Yes, yes, we do. Okay, so the first one, this topic applies to college athletic staff in general, not just ADs. The idea of moving to a lower level on the organization chart. Do you see a value or benefit in that as well for staff to pivot later in their career?
I mean, I'll take a crack at that. I think it depends on what it is. I mean, in our case, obviously it was a lower level in terms of position. It might be, you know, you might have to measure it in terms of what level of conference you're at versus where you're going. Sometimes on paper, it doesn't tell the whole story. So I think it just depends on the situation and where you're going and what the opportunity to grow might look like.
Anybody else, or you want to go to the next question, Sarah?
Sure. When you make a recommendation and your boss goes the other way, how do you handle it?
Shane.
Yeah, I you know, and again, I was, when I was in the chair, I did that a couple of times, and I just felt that, you know, I wanted the advice, but at the same time, I ended up having my own gut feeling that this is the way that we should go. So, you know, you can't take it personal. You know, I think you've always heard the you know, saying, let's stack hands, or what's said in the room stays in the room, and you go out and we all agree that whatever decision was made, we're going to support that. So, you know, I think in the support role that you're serving now is just that. You're in a support role, and you want to make and advise the athletic director, you know, what you believe should be the answer or not the answer. And if they end up going the same way, you still support that, but you don't go around the department saying, well, I told, you know, him or her that's not what they should do. You obviously keep that to yourself, and you move forward. And then again, that's just building trust between you and the athletic director, saying, oh, maybe, you know, I did take the wrong path here. But you know, that's the way I've approached it.
Tommy, any perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. Once you've been in the chair, I mean, I can think of some individuals in my mind that I knew that when I was sitting in the chair and I made, you know, a different decision than what they were really advocating for, or almost demanding, that it was like very irritating to them. And so I remember those things. And so now it's, you know, to me, it's non-tolerable. I'm going to give you the advice. I'm going to provide my opinion if asked. And then you're going to make the decision. I'm going to support you with that. There's been times even in this role where I've had to go and explain to people that report into me that, hey, we're going to, you know, I know that you and I talked about this and this was our conversation, but Candace is going to go in this direction. And I could sense maybe there's a little tension where they didn't, you know, appreciate it. And I didn't tolerate it. It's like, hey, listen, she's the boss. And at the end of the day, she's going to make the decision and we're going to support her. And so it's not only not complaining about it, but it's overly enforcing the fact that this is her decision. We're here to advise and provide perspective so that she can make a decision. She's made a decision. It just happens to not be the one we recommended.
Sarah, any other questions?
Yes, I actually have quite a few. Next question. Are you less concerned with president and more focused on the AD when you're deciding whether to accept a deputy job?
I would say for me, it was both. You know, Candace, it was really important that I knew her, but just speaking frankly, Vanderbilt had a history of maybe some presidents that weren't as supportive of athletics, and Candace being a great AD, if she doesn't have great support and alignment with her chancellor, Vanderbilt was not going to be as successful as she would want it to be. And so recognizing that there was an alignment between the president and Candace, or the chancellor in our case here, was important, because I did not want to leave being an AD to go to a place that wasn't going to be successful, because Candace is a great AD, but is not working for a chancellor that cares. And so I don't have relationship with our chancellor, but I wanted to make sure that the relationship he had with her and his vision was in alignment. And then now I can make that decision in order to come to a place and be a part of something that's going to be successful.
Yeah, Tom, I was fortunate here at San Diego State, and I agree. I think both are important. I mean, I would say in this role, who I'm actually going to work for directly played a big hand in this. But I was in Mountain West meetings as an AD with JD and with Adela, and so I had a good, strong relationship with both before I came to San Diego State, just because of my relationship within the conference. So. And I think San Diego State, its president, its community made a big statement, during COVID and all the things that led up to that, of building a brand new football stadium. So I knew that the university, the institution, and the community were definitely in support of the athletic department, which helped my decision be a little bit more comfortable coming to San Diego.
Sarah, any other questions?
Yes, we have about 6 more questions. Okay. It seems today that ADs have a background that is mostly made up of developmental fundraising experience. As someone fresh out of graduate school that has been working as a compliance coordinator at a P5 school since July, with aspirations of being in the AD chair one day, how much harder is it for me now as opposed to 5 to 10 years ago to get that AD chair?
Good question.
I'll jump in there, Tom. I mean, I think you're right. A lot of what you've seen in the past is ADs have come from that development, marketing, external type of chairs. My upbringing was through compliance and governance. Hopefully I've created some path for others to follow to come through, as opposed to being siloed into one specific category within intercollegiate athletics. I do believe that, as we've talked here today, the association as a whole continues to be, what does the future look like? That's legislation, and that's also legal issues. So, having some of those backgrounds, can help as you go through the path of becoming an athletic director in the future. So it's just, again, having those opportunities to, broaden your horizons as you, go through the career path and be involved in a number of things on your own campus is going to help you in that regard. But, I think any of the backgrounds, if it's compliance, if it's development, whatever it may be, can lead you to that chair just when you take advantage of the issues that's presented to you.
Sarah, go ahead.
Okay. Next we have, what factors led you to the conclusion that it was the right time to step into the support role versus the AD role you were in? And how long were you thinking about that path before ultimately coming to that decision?
I think for me, probably maybe 2.5 years prior to, just being frank, I had, a couple opportunities with some Power 5 and AD jobs, and the feedback was, you just never been at this level. And that's hard to hear when you feel like you're doing really good work. And so I think, that just kind of began to plant the seed in my mind of, is this something I need to do? Is there an opportunity here for me to go and invest at that level? Because again, it's like an inverted model. Most people were working their way up and would have had those experiences. My peer group in Conference USA, most every AD in the room had been at a Power 5 school before they came into the room. And so as they were gaining time, in some ways they were climbing over the top of my experience, because they had that Power 5 experience. And so it's a little bit of a reverse model, but for me, it was probably the last year, maybe 2 years, just beginning to think, hey, is this something I need to take a hard look at in order to invest in my career on a gap that was not there in my resume.
Sarah, keep firing.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this next question kind of together. What is the most important thing that NCAA should do, and what is the biggest mistake that they have made in the last 5 years?
I'll turn that over to Shane and Tommy.
Thanks.
All Shane.
Well, I mean, again, I think being on the transformation committee, that's what we talked about earlier. What does the future of intercollegiate athletics looks like? I don't think anybody has that clear picture. You know, I think what the NCAA and Kurt, I think you touched on it, what they didn't do a good job, and I'm just not blaming on the NCAA, us as a whole, is talking about the value of being a student athlete and what that actually means. It's all the support services that we just talk about a full scholarship. You know, I can tell you at my previous institution and here at Alabama, I mean, by the time you give out of state, you know, tuition and fees, you know, the amount of gear, the nutrition, the academic support services, you know, it's over a 6-figure, you know, support, you know, a deal for a student athlete each year that's on a full scholarship. And I don't think we've ever told that story as well as we needed to in the past. So, you know, if we could go back in time, it's just a matter of educating, you know, the fan bases and so on that, you know, has always been critical of the model that we have. Well, they only get this, but you have to understand they get a lot more than that college tuition and fees that go into the support services of the way they travel, the way they eat, the way the academics work, a number of issues that we haven't elaborated on in the past.
Anybody else want to weigh in? I know it's difficult territory, but Sarah, any other questions?
We have a few more. This one actually is kind of along those same lines. Do you see the role of the NCAA shifting at all with the changing landscape in athletics?
You know, I would just say, I think sometimes we all forget how big this organization actually is, how difficult it is for anybody or any group of people to help manage it. And then you throw in the different levels of schools in terms of budget and competition and revenue and expenses and those kinds of things. So I think it's just important for us just to realize that. And I would echo Shane's comments, as I mentioned earlier. The value of a full ride scholarship, you know, it's kind of funny. I've been in this for so long, and when I really understood the value of a full ride scholarship is when I had to help put my 2 daughters through school. Best investment I ever made, but I very quickly found out personally what that expense is and how important it is to be able to have that opportunity to have a full ride scholarship and all the things that come along with it. So I'm not sure there's a great answer of, you know, where it should be or how they should govern us or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of folks working on, you know, what that is going to look like going forward, but it is a big task and not easy to tackle for sure.
Okay, I just have a couple more questions. What is your process to determine vertical alignment within a prospective institution?
You want to repeat that, Sarah?
What is your process to determine vertical alignment within a prospective institution?
I mean, again, assuming making the decision to come here, it's just really about interviewing. You know, you're being interviewed, but you have the opportunity also to reverse interview to ask those questions. I think, you know, I think vertically from athletic director to president or chancellor to board, you know, how can you best discern and ask questions that would provide, you know, information that there is alignment. And then you would be looking for tangible evidence of that through, you know, articles or comments or who's on the board. What have their comments been towards athletics? here I felt like it was definitely more, how is the chancellor and the AD's relationship going to be? But that's what you're trying to discover.
Sarah, let's finish up the last ones.
Okay, last question. What is your key direct relationship with the faculty of the university?
I'll jump in there. I mean, again, I think it's, serving in this, in this role, you may be a little bit more in the trenches. So you do have a little bit more of those relationships with faculty on campus. I know here at Alabama, we have the Intercollegiate Athletics Committee, which is a variety of faculty and professors here on campus, as well as a couple external people that we meet on a monthly basis and provide those updates. You work very closely with your academic staff, who really has those issues, on their plate, dealing with faculty and class issues, et cetera, and the provost for the institution. So, it's just a matter of open lines of communication, building those relationships. I think some campuses have, programs where they invite, to football and basketball games, the faculty, just to say, here's a day in the life of a student athlete, especially on the game day, of what they go through so they can see it. So again, it's just about communicating and working hand in hand with the faculty and staff to be able to share the vision, from an educational side as well as the student athlete side of, what athletes go through.
Any other thoughts? If not, why don't we just go to your any closing thoughts on your journey and where you are, and any advice for those listening out there? Tommy, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I kind of already said it. I mean, it is a very difficult and a complex organization, but it is noble. Like, there are a lot of stressful jobs in the world, but none of which give you free access to the entertainment that we get, and get to be around these student athletes. I mean, honestly, if I'm having a bad day, or if it's just been a long day, the best thing about my job is that if I want to, I can leave this office, and walk out to any practice, any sport. And that just, it soothes the soul. And we don't have, that doesn't exist everywhere else. And so just being around the student athletes, seeing them compete, seeing them be a part of the team and be part of a common goal, my advice would be is to be as close to that as possible. Even if you're far away from your job, find ways to be around those student athletes, because they're energizing to me.
Wow. Shane, thanks.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Tommy's right on point. It's, again, we get into this business because of student athletes, and a lot of times you get tied up in your office on Zoom calls and meetings, and you don't really go out and are around student athletes. And if you want to get re-energized, it is going out to that practice and being around it. Being involved in the business for 35 plus years now, you look back to say, why did I get involved? And it was because of student athletes. And, I found out very quickly, they stay 18 to 22 is our time range, and we keep getting older. But, you're making a difference in their lives. And that's where, you can make a difference and be involved in that. As I said earlier, this is it's really not a business, it's a lifestyle. So if you're young and upcoming in this business, many times, I had my own children at the events, and we had many meals together at venues. It's just part of our lifestyle and the upbringing of the family. And I wouldn't change it for the world, even though at times it can be a grind.
Kurt, last word.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I've been in love with sports my whole life, and I got a chance to be a part of it and make a living at the same time. And I would say this about this business: it keeps you young. The people that you deal with, back to Shane's comments, stay a certain age. You just always feel a youthfulness, at least for me, when I walk in whatever department I'm a part of at the time. And most of it is really, really fun. And it's doing something professionally that you love personally, at least for me, that has kept me in this. And I wouldn't change one day, 1 minute over the last 40 years. And if I had to do it all over again, it'd be an easy decision.
Well, thank you all for being part of this. And I know we got a lot of response from the audience and really appreciate your insights. For those listening, next week, we really have a very interesting forum on buyer beware, relevant data for FBS football college athletes upon entering the transfer portal. We have some extraordinary statistics that we're going to share with folks about what is actually happening in the transfer portal. So stay tuned to that next week. Tommy, Shane, Kurt, thank you so much for being part of this and look forward to seeing you on the trail somewhere. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
guys.